Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're looking at the state of New Jersey and some updated polling that's come out since the last time I did a polling video a few days ago, which shows a narrow direction change for the Democrat Mikie Sherrill in this race. Now the 2025 New Jersey governor's race 1 of 2 along with Virginia, New Jersey is expected to be the closer of the two matchups as we're eagerly awaiting whether the Democrat Mikie Sherrill can win the state of New Jersey and keep the usually blue state in the Democratic hands, or can the Republican nominee, Jack Ciattarelli, run another close race like he did in 2021 and narrowly pull off an upset and flip New Jersey red? New Jersey is also getting a lot of attention after 2024, where Donald Trump narrowly lost the state to Kamala Harris by only 6 points. Even though that is a likely Democratic win, back in 2020, Joe Biden won the state by roughly 16 points. So a shift of about 10 points between 2020 and 2024 has made the state of New Jersey a more competitive state and a very interesting one to cover for 2025. It's also worth noting the governor's race in New Jersey for 2025 is going to be the first test of President Donald Trump's second term, and how Republicans are able to do in this election could be a potential indicator at how Democrats and Republicans may do heading into 2026 and the ramifications for that. Now, if you saw my prior video, you already know this, but if this is your first time watching my video covering New Jersey's governor's race, the Democrat candidate is Mikie Sherrill, the U.S. Congresswoman, and the Republican nominee is Jack Ciattarelli, who was also the nominee for governor in 2021. Now, the point of today's video, as I mentioned in the title, is the polling where we have seen some changes since the last video. We're now in the averages, a very slight lead of about a point or so for Mikie Sherrill has come out. Real Clear Politics now has Sherrill leading over Ciattarelli by 4%. Decision Desk HQ now has Sherrill leading over Ciattarelli by 5.3%. And Race to the White House now has Sherrill leading over Ciattarelli by 5 points. In average, Sherrill's now leading Ciattarelli by 4.8% across these three averages. Now, this is significant as since the last time I did this video, we did have some new polls come out, 2 of which have come from Democratic-aligned pollsters, 2 of which from Republican-aligned pollsters, and they sort of show similar but also a little bit contrasting things here. First is John Zogby Strategy's Democratic poll showed Sherrill leading by about 8 points with still 8% undecided. The usual rule that I use, which is when there's a partisan poll, I shift it 5 points on average in the opposite direction of the pollster as to account for the bias of the poll, and if so, that 8-point lead becomes right around a Sherrill 3-point lead, which was what the prior polling the last few days and so have looked like. Now, for the public policy polling poll, which is sponsored by the Democratic Governors Association, who are obviously supporting Mikie Sherrill, they showed this race Sherrill at 49, Ciattarelli 43, with 8% undecided, a 6-point lead. Now, again, using that same rule, would have the Democrat Sherrill up by about 5 points. Now, those are the 2 Democratic polls, both of which, even after that 5-point shift, show a very close competitive race, but one that Mikie Sherrill, the Democrat, is still winning. Now, these 2 Republican polls also show a very interesting thing here. For one, the sample size in the neighborhood research poll at 311 is the smallest of the 3 polls, and margin of error of 5.6% is the largest here. But it also shows that Sherrill and Ciattarelli are tied in this race 44 to 44, with still 12% undecided. So, for one thing, this seems to be the most favorable Republican poll for Ciattarelli, that of the 4 that we've gone over in this new update. It also, with being a Republican poll, given that 5-point rating, that could be anywhere from a tied race to a 5-point lead for Mikie Sherrill using that 5-point rule, which again is right around what the polling average is currently showing. Now, the Rasmussen Reports poll is very interesting because Rasmussen is a well-known Republican pollster, and they have Mikie Sherrill leading over Jack Ciattarelli by 6 points in this race. And if that 5-point rule was to be accounted for, Sherrill could be up by as much as 11 points in this race with everything said and done. Now, at the same time, what's interesting about this poll is 4% are saying they're supporting other candidates, third-party candidates, and 9% are currently undecided. So this would be very interesting. This is one of the more lopsided we've seen numbers on the Democratic side for a Republican poll. Where at the same time, though, Sherrill around 46%, Ciattarelli at 40%. We know both of them are likely going to get more than that support on Election Day, but that's where the poll currently has it. So as for the overall polling average right now, it's shaping up to be more competitive than what the polling average showed for 2021, but a similar trend is still going, which is still there's a lot of undecided voters left out right around 3 weeks until Election Day. And just to show you what I mean by this, the 2021 election, the final polling averages between October 15th and 31st showed Phil Murphy getting around 50.5%, Jack Ciattarelli 42.7%, with the final update around November 1st, with still roughly 7% undecided. So even though Murphy was winning by 7.8% of the vote, there was still roughly 7% of voters that said they had not made up their mind, or that were voting third party, or purposely just not telling the pollsters who they were going to support, which ultimately led, when the final results came in, Murphy getting 51.22%, Ciattarelli 48%, a very big boost for Ciattarelli in the polls. Phil Murphy only roughly went up about another point or so in the polls. Ciattarelli went up another 6 points. And so that undecided voters broke heavily for Ciattarelli. Now, that happened in 2021, where the Democratic president was Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's approval ratings were not very strong. This time around, it's 2025, and the historical expectation has been the president's party usually does poorly. So in this scenario, Mikie Sherrill will be the one capitalizing off Donald Trump's poor approval ratings, whereas this time around, it seems we're having a very competitive governor's race in New Jersey regardless. Now, the big elephant in the room for this race, and why it could be still competitive, is the governor of New Jersey's Phil Murphy. He's finishing up his second term. The polling data has showed his approval rating right around split 50-50 across the state of New Jersey, which could be giving Jack Ciattarelli, who a Republican in this race would normally have a much lower chance of winning, it could be giving him a more competitive chance at winning this race. But one thing that this race is shaping up to be very similarly to 2021 is that these other voters or undecided voters are going to decide who wins. Mikie Sherrill has a lead right now, and I would say she is favored to win, but she has a smaller lead than Phil Murphy did in 2021. Where again, yes, all the vote ended up going for Ciattarelli and Murphy still won, but at this point in time, Phil Murphy was already over 50% of the vote at 50.5 and ended up getting around 51%. But Ciattarelli was around 42.7% of the vote. Now for 2025, Jack Ciattarelli is actually in a very similar situation here. The polling averages has him at 42.8, 43.1, 42.8, on average 42.9%. So in terms of Jack Ciattarelli's polling numbers, he's right around where he was in the 2021 polling averages as well. Whereas Mikie Sherrill is the one that's changing in this regard. She is underperforming Phil Murphy by roughly 4 points or so in these polling averages when you compare it to the 2021 race. Now again, 2025 could be different than 2021, Republican president versus Democratic president, but this is important to look at in terms of the history of this governor's race, because if Ciattarelli does come out of nowhere on election night and pull off the upset, a lot of political analysts are going to be saying, well, how did this happen, or how did we miss this? And right now, the undecided voters is the key here. Sherrill only getting around 46, 47, 48% leaves a very slight opening that if Jack Ciattarelli can replicate what he did in 2021, Ciattarelli can pull off the upset and win. Now, I am still considering it an upset, because even though Mikie Sherrill's around 48% or so, and Ciattarelli's around 43%, I do still think it's more likely that Mikie Sherrill wins, due to the fact that New Jersey's record and history of being more of a Democratic state, even though it has elected Republican governors in the past. Most notably, Chris Christie was the most recent Republican governor in the state. New Jersey, though it did get more competitive, is still more of a Democratic state than a Republican state, at least for right now, and Mikie Sherrill does have an advantage in the polling data thus far. But still, around that 9 to 10% of voters that are still undecided are going to what make or breaks this race. But the most interesting development in this video, since the last video I did, is Mikie Sherrill's polling numbers have actually narrowly gone up. Where last week, she was around a 3 to 3.5 point lead in the Real Clear Politics average, and around a 4-point lead in Decision Desk and Race to the White House. Now her numbers have gone up to 5 or over 5 here, and up to 4 for here, which suggests at very least some of those undecided voters may have narrowly gone for Mikie Sherrill. So this is what the race is currently looking like right now. Mikie Sherrill still leading on average by 4.8%, a lean Democratic margin. Race to the White House at 5 points, Real Clear Politics 4, right around that lean margin, and Decision Desk narrowly at 5.3 into the lively Democratic margin as well. What those undecided voters do, though, will ultimately decide this race. Now, this is going to be interesting for a whole lot of reasons, because right around that 4 to 5 point margin, we're starting to talk about the 2024 presidential race, where Kamala Harris won it by 5.9%, and this is what the map ended up looking like, where you saw some narrow wins for Trump in Morris County and Passaic County, and you saw Trump win Atlantic by 3, Cumberland by 3, and Gloucester by 2.8. Now, Jack Ciattarelli in 2021 did actually outperform President Trump in some areas in terms of some of the margins. Some of these areas, like Cumberland, was a 12.1, Gloucester a 10.1, Atlantic a 12.1. Ciattarelli also won Morris by 11 points here. Now, Trump did win Passaic, and Passaic went for Phil Murphy over Jack Ciattarelli by 4 points last time, but that could be a potential flip area to watch for as well. Looking at 2024, again, it was a 5.9% win for Kamala Harris. If we were to shift this map roughly by around 1 point or so, I don't know if we can do it on the state side of things, but if we could do it, we're probably going to see a shift in some key areas, like Passaic and Morris getting more red, Bergen County getting very close to flipping, if not flipping outright, getting very, very close. And then you see some areas like Somerset and Middlesex narrowing up a little bit. And that's going to be the thing that Jack Ciattarelli is trying to do for November in 2025, is can Jack Ciattarelli try and replicate the map he did in 2021 and also gain the areas that President Trump gained in 2024, like in Passaic County, and trying to gain in Bergen County as well. And that's going to be the big question for what Jack Ciattarelli can do. Because as I mentioned, the election environment overall does seem to suggest that Mikie Sherrill should be winning this race and probably should be winning it by a larger margin than she is currently in the polling data. While at the same time, I would still say she's favored in this race. Jack Ciattarelli certainly can win this race if he wins a lot of those undecided voters in the same way he did in 2021. Now, what I'm watching for right now, and I've done this in some past videos as well, but I'm watching northern New Jersey to give us an indicator at how this race is going. I'm watching Morris County, I'm watching Passaic, I'm watching Bergen, and I'm watching the margins in Essex and in Hudson as well. Because Mikie Sherrill is going to win Essex and Hudson by large margins, but what's the voting turnout? What's the percentages looking like? These are two key areas I'm watching. Since there's so many Democratic votes all brought into these counties, what are the margins looking like? If they're more like 2021 and it's showing Jack Ciattarelli running a little bit better there, that could be a sign that Mikie Sherrill may be in trouble and the Democratic wave that should be happening in 2025 may not be coming in the way that it usually would. Or if Sherrill's outperforming Murphy and even Kamala Harris from 2024 in these key counties, Union, Essex, Hudson, that could be a good sign. I'm also watching Bergen County, Passaic, and Morris. Because if Jack Ciattarelli is becoming the next governor of New Jersey, there's a very good chance these three counties are either all voting for Ciattarelli, or at very least, we're getting very close to seeing them vote for Ciattarelli. Somerset's another one. It was a 4-point win or so for Phil Murphy, and Trump lost it by around 14 points. If Jack Ciattarelli is winning, there's a very good chance this county, which is more Democratic than Republican, could narrowly be going red or being an under 1-point Democratic win. So these are some key areas I am watching for. Bottom line, though the polling data has shifted towards Mikie Sherrill, this is still a very competitive race that either candidate could win. But as of today, it seems Mikie Sherrill is a very slight favorite to hold on and win the New Jersey governor's race. But what those undecided voters do is really leaving a lot of pause here, because this race could go from a lean Democratic win to a tilt Republican win just like that if those undecided voters all break. Whereas at the other side, if all the undecided voters break towards Ciattarelli, what was looking like a super close New Jersey governor's race could become a pretty reliable, likely Democratic win. So what those undecideds do really is going to shift this race. Right now, though, the polling data does seem to suggest this should be a lean win for Mikie Sherrill, right around that 5-point Democratic win. It's possible it goes into the likely category of 5 to 15 points, but right now I would still leave it under 5 points at this current point in time for the New Jersey governor's race. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you did, leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts and who you think is going to win the New Jersey governor's race. Leave that all down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.